When waking the prisoners for the 10 o'clock count, the morning guard shift found that the prisoners in cell number 1 had removed their stocking caps, ripped off their numbers, and barricaded themselves inside the cells by putting their beds against the door. The prisoners began to taunt and curse the guards to their face. This, of course, embarrassed and upset the guards. The morning shift immediately called in reinforcements. They asked the night shift to stay on, and they called up 3 other standby guards to help put down the rebellion. In retaliation for the prisoners' insubordination, the guards stripped naked the prisoners in cell 2 and 3 and removed their beds, and they demanded that the barricade be removed from cell 1. One of the ringleaders of the rebellion, prisoner 8612, protested loudly. The guards threw him into the hole. The other leader of the rebellion, prisoner 5704, had his feet chained together by the guards. The rebellion was temporarily crushed, but a new problem faced the guards. They realized that 9 guards could, of course, control 9 prisoners, but how could a regular shift of only 3 of them maintain control over the prisoners without using physical force? One of the guards came up with the idea of using psychological tactics instead of physical ones. The guards set up a privilege cell, and prisoners who were least involved with the rebellion were put in there and given special privileges. They got their uniforms back, they were allowed to wash themselves and brush their teeth. The others were not. Beds were returned to the privileged cell. Prisoners in the privileged cell were offered a special meal, while the others were only allowed to watch. Yet the privileged prisoners refused to eat the special meal, showing their solidarity with the punished prisoners. Prisoner 1037 refused to come out of the hole until all the beds had been returned. The prisoners seemed to be winning. The guards took measures to increase their control over the prisoners, making them do push-ups, sit-ups, and jumping jacks to punish them. The guards began to implement more strip searches. Every aspect of a prisoner's behavior fell under the total arbitrary control of the guards who were on any given shift. Prisoners who had been rewarded were now punished by the guards for no reason. Going to the toilet became a privilege that a guard could grant or deny. And after the 10 p.m. lockup, the prisoners had to urinate and defecate in a bucket, which was left in their cells. And on occasion, the guard would refuse to let the prisoners empty that bucket until morning, and the cells began to smell. The harassment by the guards and the worsening of prison conditions got to prisoner 8612, the rebellion leader. He decided he had enough. He wanted out. So he started complaining of headaches and stomach pains. 8612 was interviewed by the staff. The warden was unsympathetic. Our ex-convict prison consultant, Carlo Prescott, ridiculed him as a white boy unable to cope with minimal prison hardships. And I, as the superintendent, offered him a deal. No more guard harassment of him in return for some information from time to time. In short, I asked him to be a snitch. I told him, think it over and let me know your decision later that night. Confused, 8612 returned to the yard during the evening count and told the other prisoners that no one could get out.
8612, against the wall. Against the wall, 8612. Somebody help him.
You got the key to the handcuffs first?
Well, I just gave him this special officer.
Like, if I gotta be in here, I'm not gonna put up with any of your shit. I mean, you know, really. I mean, I couldn't get out. I spent all the time talking to doctors and lawyers.
Help him against the wall.
Well, they wouldn't let me out. You can't get out of here. That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Obviously, this news coming from one of their respected leaders had a dramatic impact on the other prisoners.
You said you can't get out. And then you really felt like you were a prisoner. You know, you maybe was in part of this experiment and maybe you were getting paid for it, but damn it, you were a prisoner. You were really a prisoner there.
Mm-hmm. I was told that I couldn't quit. And at that point, I felt that, well, it was really a prison. And at that point, I don't know, there's no way I can describe how I felt. I just felt totally hopeless. More hopeless than I'd ever felt before.
There were no more signs of rebellion in the prison. But prisoner 8612 couldn't believe that he had lost all control over his situation. His confusion amplified the frustration and feelings of helplessness that he was experiencing. 8612 decided that the only way to get out was to show everyone he had gone crazy. Then they would have to release him. He began to play the role of the crazy person, but soon the role became too real as he went into an uncontrollable rage.
I feel so fucked up inside. I feel really fucked up inside. You don't know. I gotta go. I to a doctor, anything. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm burning up inside. Don't you know? I can't say that. I'm fucked up. I don't know how to explain it. I'm all fucked up inside. I want out! I want out now!
Less than 36 hours into the experiment, we had no choice but to release prisoner 8612. Tuesday was visiting day. We were worried that once the parents saw the condition of our jail, they would want to take their sons home. We decided to manipulate both the prisoners and the visitors to preserve our institution. First, we cleaned the prison and groomed the prisoners. The guards took down the sign over the hole, fed the prisoners a hot meal, and warned them not to complain or the visiting hour would be cut short. When the visitors arrived, they were first greeted by an attractive receptionist, Susie Phillips. Music was piped in over the intercom system. The visitors were made to register and then to wait half an hour while their sons were finishing a late dinner with some extra dessert. We wanted to undercut any complaints the prisoners would make by having the situation be so obviously pleasant and benign. Also, we wanted the parents to attribute some unexpected inconveniences to their sons' neglect in writing to them about a number of visiting rules and regulations. Visits were monitored by a guard, limited to only 2 visitors per prisoner and to only 10 minutes total. Of course, these adults complained about such arbitrary rules. But since they obeyed despite their dissent, the institution had retained its authority in this situation. The visitors left their distressed sons in our jail, content that we were doing a good job in running this simulated prison experiment. Visiting hour went off without a hitch. The hitch came after the visit, when the parents had left. The guards had picked up a rumor that the prisoners were planning an escape. According to the rumor, prisoner 8612, whom we had released the day before, was going to return with a bunch of his friends and force the release of the other prisoners. Next, we decided to dismantle the prison and move all the prisoners up to a remote storage room on the top floor. Extra guards were called in to help clean it out and transport the inmates and bolster security. The plan was for me to be waiting in the basement in the empty corridor when 8612 returned with his friends. I would tell him that we decided to end the experiment early and that everyone had gone home. After they left, we would rebuild the prison. We even discussed luring 8612 back and then imprisoning him because he had been paroled under false pretenses. The confrontation never came off. No one ever showed. The guards had wasted the whole day tearing down and then rebuilding their prison, and even missed lunch. Someone was going to pay for all this.
Down. Up.
The guards again escalated very noticeably their level of harassment of the prisoners and increased the humiliation that they made the prisoners suffer.
Down.
Push-ups increased in number and severity. The counts became grueling ordeals lasting for several hours. They made the prisoners clean out toilet bowls with their bare hands and polish the guards' shoes.
Prisoners, and I began to lose all sympathy I had for them, and any respect that might have been present, I just shut out. Then I began to treat them as coldly as possible, as harshly as possible, and by the third day, I had done such a good job convincing myself that I was acting like that. I treated the prisoners like they were of a distinct inferior order than myself.